Okay, I've got a certain way into this project, and I'm finding myself talking a lot about evolution and about sensory motor systems and those kinds of agendas, which is what I wanted to do in the first part. But I feel like I've reached a stage in that now where I'm just not familiar enough with the material that I'm finding myself talking about to proceed with that before I find a bit more out really. I've read the books and I kind of understand. I completely understand what I'm talking about, but I don't really feel like I've walked around in those ideas enough to kind of feel the overall structure, or to get a clear experiential sense of how this lot all fits together. Uh, it's feeling a little bit plodding. I feel like I'm being very tentative about putting one foot in front of the another, in front of another, just lining up those ideas. So I do need to spend some more time, as I say, walking around those ideas before I can really feel confident about what I'm saying there. So I'm going to just pause on that part one stuff for a bit, uh, and after this video I'm going to start doing some work a little bit later on in this project uh, that I'm more familiar with, that I do feel I have more of a felt engagement with. So what I thought I'd do here is just to try to draw a line between where I am now and where I want to get to in this second part. I'm trying to kind of suggesting the things that I want to cover and that I will make videos about and do some writing about once, as I say, I've got myself more familiar with those things. What I want to try and do there is to draw, as I say, draw a line, write the story, if you like, which connects those ideas that I've been dealing with up till now, which is to do with the evolution of a central nervous system, the evolution of a sensory motor mode of cognition. What I want to do is work out of that towards ideas to do with the development of what you might think of as kind of higher modes of cognition, but certainly more complex modes of cognition. Modes of cognition which utilize cognitive frameworks which are modular, multi-purpose, capable of engaging in lots of different ways, and then coming out of that to talk about more recent evolutionary developments of the brain, but of cognition more generally, which allow for much more kind of multi-purposing and more the deriving of concepts really, as opposed to representations of percepts. And what I want to try to get to there is talk about that the idea that the deriving of concepts is based on the action representations of percepts. I don't quite know how to get that, how to make those kind of connections, but I think they're there to be made, and I'm looking forward to having a go at that at some point. Around about this time, I'll have to start talking about language, and see if I can flesh out some stuff to do with that, and particularly to do with representation as it exists within language. And I think it's at that point I'll start bringing in more clearly poetic references, or references more clearly to the kinds of formulations that exist within within poetics, the kinds of transformations of material, the kinds of the kind of linguistic shenanigans that have to take place in order to express the inexpressible, or in order to express concepts at all, really. And I'll be describing those, I think, as poetic, and basically mapping those linguistic, expressive, conscious processes onto the sensory motor processes which precede them in evolutionary history, and kind of form the substrate for them within the actual fabric of thought and the fabric of the brain, I suppose. So I'll be trying to take it under that little journey. Now that's the most difficult bit I've got, because it's the part I'm least familiar with. So I'm going to try and get across that. Coming out of this thing about language and poetic tropes within language, particularly in metaphor, then I'll be going into largely conceptual metaphor theory, the work of Lakoff and Johnson, the work of Mark Turner. That whole school of cognitive linguistics influenced approaches to how meaning works, to kind of embodied understandings of meaning, particularly meaning of abstract and abstract concepts. And as I say, once I've nailed that down, if I can nail that down, in fact, I think I'll just do a specific video just about cognitive linguistics and conceptual metaphor theory, just to try to remind myself of that before I go into the next part. But once I have bedded that all in, I think that'll give me the framework to move into the next part, which is to do with a kind of cognitive linguistic / cognitive poetic analysis of certain forms of thought, specifically this form of thought that we call knowledge, which I'll be saying is an abstract concept and is therefore understood through the application of poetic devices like metaphor. Okay, so that's the trajectory, trying to lead out of this, of the mud and the slime of the early days of life on the planet, through the Pleistocene, when we stopped being animals and started being people, and then on into the development of language and development of poetics, and hopefully joining the dots between all those. And I don't know if I can manage it or not, but I'm going to give it a shot. So that's the project. So the next couple of videos I make, as I say, I'll be in those areas, not in the areas of evolutionary development. I should just say at this point, by the way, that I am so grateful to some of the people who've been kind enough to talk to me or to send me personal messages or to make comments on the blog that accompanies this project. I'm full of admiration for the level of thinking that goes on with people, and the fact that they're willing to share those thoughts is fantastic. So thanks to all those people, and that's it for now. Thank you.